I appreciate you agreeing to be interviewed.
Hey, I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. So I've been juggling around. I'm trying to get everything in order. But basically it's just a conversation, like I don't like to be too serious, you know what I mean? Obviously, you know, in the cannabis space, we're still tiptoeing, but I think one of the reasons I started the Ohio Cannabis Report was because I felt like there wasn't enough conversation in Ohio publicly about cannabis, right? Or about opportunities, jobs, just everything that goes into cannabis. And
Right.
so that's kind of how, I started it. It was the idea. And so some of my background, I'm from the East Coast originally, so I'm a little bit more blunt. I'm a little bit more straightforward. Um, Born in upstate New York, raised in Maryland, DC area. Came down to Ohio by way of Ohio University for a full scholarship for football, where I had a lot of great success, but also where I started to realize how powerful the media was, TV, things like that. Tried out for the NFL in 2013 for the Oakland Raiders, got cut, and then I had to figure out what I wanted to do in my life. My degree was in healthcare administration, so I studied healthcare and basically how the American healthcare system works and runs from a business perspective,
Mhm.
administrator perspective. But I was already consuming cannabis as an athlete, stuff like that. So I was putting things together, right? I'm in this world, but in this world and in the gray and black market, and so I wanted to do things that could obviously change the narrative, right, behind cannabis, and how do we do that? And so I got my medical card. I didn't really start to speak publicly until I got my medical card when we started our program. And that's when I finally felt comfortable, confident enough to use my platform as being a former All-American Division One athlete, a NFL prospect, to say, hey, I consume cannabis. Hey, I medicate, right? And so that felt like a huge release. But I also knew there was tons of other people out there feeling the same way. I knew a lot of people were dealing with similar things, especially, anybody that we TV, right? You see Snoop Dogg, but Snoop Dogg is
Mhm.
different than your news anchor, your average actor. We'll see, who is it? Not Will Ferrell. Is it Will? No, what's the Seth Rogen, some of these people, like
Right.
we see bits and pieces, but we don't typically see our executives. We typically don't see our high ranking officials or anybody in government and all these places. Now, I'm somebody that's been around politicians, athletes, businessmen, executives, trust fund babies, lawyers, I've been in the rooms with everybody, and you see everybody's actions, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so we realized that cannabis, one, is touching a lot of people. Two, a lot of people are hiding it, that they're consuming it, that they're involved with it. Or there's just that complete negative stigmatism behind it, right? Oh, people that consume cannabis are lazy, they're drug addicts. There's all these different narratives that come around it. So I say all that to say that's why I started Ohio Cannabis Report. Um,
Mm.
and it was scary at first, right? It's scary to get people to share publicly with their face on camera admitting to consuming cannabis. But
Right.
in the times that we're in, with legalization, obviously we just voted for issue 2, so we'll get into that. But we're the 24th state, and so obviously this is something that's not taboo anymore. This is something that people want, we need. And so what do we need more than anything? We need people with experience with the plant.
Mhm.
Talk about the plant. We need the people who have been underground to come above ground and say, hey, this is what it is. Yeah, because it's legal now. You know what I mean? Like, what
Mhm.
we're going to do? Wait for the big corporations to come in and spend millions of dollars, and then the little guy says, "Oh well, we were here the whole time." It's like, no, you had your opportunity, and this is our opportunity. And I'm
Yeah.
for the little guy. I'm always for the underdog. I understand business at a very high level. I understand politics at a high level, and I also understand that I can't win any of those games by myself because
Right.
games are capital intensive. They require the media, they require a lot of different pieces. And when you're a part of that system, as I was as an entertainer, as a football player, you get to
Mm-hmm.
see how this machine moves and operates and manipulates people. And so that's basically what's being done, right? Because we promote alcohol at football games. We
Right.
promote
Right.
bad food at football games. We
Right.
promote violence, but it's a family-friendly sport. But cannabis is bad. And the men on the field destroying their bodies trying to consume cannabis to protect themselves and their brains and heal are bad people for consuming. So that's where
Right.
I've been, right? So as you can see, anger, frustration, all the things. And so again, that's how Cannabis Report came about, because I just knew there were so many voices. I knew there were so many people that are in the shadows, suffering, that want to talk, that want to share, but maybe don't have a platform to, or don't know how to, start that conversation. And so we've been doing Ohio Cannabis Report for 2 years now. And it's been changing. It's been growing. Obviously life's been happening. I've
Mm-hmm.
been meeting a lot of people. I've been getting comfortable and used to, having these interactions and putting myself out there again. So again, I want to thank you for joining us. And with no further ado, I would love for you to introduce yourself to the audience. We'll put this up on YouTube. It'll go on our Instagram, and once it gets out there, get out there. So share what you do, who you are, your background, how'd you get involved in cannabis, and what does cannabis do for you?
Yeah. So my name's Theo Hieneman. I'm from Portsmouth, Ohio. I've been a patient for about 3 years. Um,
Now, where is
had
that in Ohio? Because I'm gonna slow you down there, because people. So me not being a true Ohioan, but now I'm a resident. Both of my kids were born at Ohio State. Um, People don't know much about Ohio, right? They know
yeah.
Cleveland, they know
Hmm.
Cincinnati, and they don't really know these places you hear about. So
Right.
Cleveland,
Right.
Cincinnati, and the Buckeyes. You don't even know much about Columbus. So tell us
Right.
where that is located. Is it located closer to Cleveland, Cincinnati, Columbus?
It is on the bare bottom of Ohio, uh,
Okay.
right across from Kentucky, right on the river.
And that's
Yeah,
important.
yep, yep. I'm right there on the river of Ohio, right, Kentucky, tri-state area, West Virginia.
Wow.
Sorry, I
Okay.
jumped on. Uh, but yeah, we just got a dispensary last year in Portsmouth, or in New Boston, I should say.
So
It's
where was
helped
the
out a lot.
closest one before that, before last year? Because we've had a program, what, for 5 years now? Four?
Yeah, yeah. The last before that was in Jackson, Ohio, about 45 minutes.
Okay. So
Once they,
people had to drive 45 minutes for medical cannabis. And
yeah.
I'm breaking it down because again, a lot of people in Ohio are quiet, and we
Hmm.
wonder why like Ohio's not getting any help, or why
Yeah.
like, we can listen to any major conversation around cannabis and nobody's involving Ohio. And
Right.
so I bring this up because again, you're right across the border from Kentucky, which
Mhm.
obviously Kentucky is not legal. And so you have people crossing the border. We have people from Ohio driving from Ohio to Michigan, and other legal states. And so this plays a role when we talk about economy, we talk about jobs, we talk about healthcare,
Yep.
um, because we have a medical program. So you have one of 20 something ailments and illnesses that you can be recommended cannabis for legally in the state. And if you can't drive, or you have cancer, or you deal with pain, or you don't have the means, this means that you have to stay on the gray market. This
Right.
means you still have to, subject yourself to maybe not getting the best quality that may be out there, or and so when people watching this and listening, this is because Ohio, again, being a healthcare major, we struggle with healthcare in our state. We have one of the
Mhm.
worst healthcare systems for the overall population, in the country. We rank at near bottom. And so cannabis is something that's, I believe, can help a lot of people. And so you're close to Kentucky, but you're in Ohio. Y'all just
Mhm.
got a dispensary last year.
That's a little too. That's a little too free. I would say 6 months.
6 months
To
ago.
be safe. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. That was a little. I'll say 6 months. That's a little closer. But yeah, it's done great. It's done wonderful. Staff's amazing. People in there's amazing.
Now, are you working in the dispensary or are you just a patient?
I'm a patient for now. I'm no longer working in the cannabis industry, unfortunately. I had some health problems arise and I had to take a different path, but I'm hoping to get back in. Um,
Once you're in,
yeah,
you're always in.
yeah,
And this is also something that I'm trying to do with courage, or not courage. So I'm also a author. I'm encouraging cannabis by Dr. Bridget Williams. She's a doctor, a cannabis recommending doctor out of Ohio, and she's been doing great. Shout out to her. Happy belated birthday. A few of the authors are out at MJ BizCon right now. So shout out to them. But I bring that up because the courage, one, to talk about being in the cannabis industry, obviously we have to bring our healthcare into the conversation typically too. And I think that's what a lot of people struggle with. But also it shows that, you want to work in this industry or be a part of it, but some of the things that are preventing you are healthcare issues. But it also shows that, hey, you can still be in this industry without directly working in the industry, right? We just have to create our own, way around it. And that's why I created this platform, right? Because you think about the ancillary market around cannabis, right? Like everything doesn't have to be growing weed. We can talk
right,
about weed, right? We can
yeah,
we can create products around it. We create merchandise. We can create conferences or whatever. And so that's one thing I'm trying to get people to see too, is that the industry is much bigger than being a bud tender, than the
yeah,
transaction. Like we need more people to educate. We need more people to come out and share their stories, write books. Hey, I'm dealing with arthritis, right? So I deal with chronic pain, arthritis after a 15-year football career. This is how football impacted me. This is how cannabis is helping me sustain my life while
mhm,
living with the pain.
yeah,
This is how I get to do some of the things y'all see me do, and y'all don't even know I'm in pain, but
right,
cannabis helps me do that, right? And so I think, again, these are some of the stories that have to come to the forefront, because a lot of times people say, oh, he's not working, he's lazy. He's not
yeah,
working, he's smoking, he's lazy. But you may be creative. You may have so many ideas and so many things you want to do, but you can't physically do them because we're living in a post-labor market, right? We got AI, we got robots. Now we need more creatives, we need more thinkers, more builders. Um,
sorry
so
about that.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you sharing that. No, go ahead.
Um, but yeah, I'm no longer working in the cannabis field, obviously, but it's an amazing field to be in for anybody. Hold on, let me tell my dog to shut up. And I'm sorry. But yeah, I've been a patient for 3 years. And the program within itself has helped me. I don't know what I'd do without it. I have the qualifications for my card was PTSD and major pain. I played sports myself. I had to have 2 knee surgeries within my time in high school, and it was very rough. And like my knees still today are shot. Like
But
I can
ACL.
barely, yeah, a little bit of ACL. My meniscus is part pig, and stuff like that. So basketball really messed up my knees. And cannabis helped. I mean, cannabis
And
did
that was in
what.
high school.
Yeah, yeah, that was in high school because I remember being like 12 years old and being prescribed like Percocets, like willingly, like from a doctor, like yeah, like just handing them out like candy. And my parents were like, no, like you're not taking that.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, and cannabis did definitely what doctors couldn't. I'm not shaming doctors. They have a job to do, and I mean a lot of doctors still look down on cannabis. So you
Yeah.
know, but I'm grateful for cannabis for that. And not only my PTSD, man, it helped me so much. You know, being prescribed, heavy sedatives for certain, bad episodes and stuff like that. Cannabis does have, you can have sedative effects, but not that, puts you down, you're down
Right.
for like a day and it's hard to get back up tired. So cannabis really tremendously helped for mental health, physical health, everything.
I love that. And I think
Yeah.
I mean, you touched on a lot there, but you touched on a lot of points, especially I think as men, right?
Right.
Even at the intersection of race, right? I don't think we talk about mental health, physical health, cross race. And I think that's
Right.
why cannabis is such a powerful plant, because it literally sits at the intersection of a lot of the social issues that we're dealing with, right?
It
And
does.
so, when you think about rest, like, yeah, if a lot of us are operating and we're tired, so we need sleep, right?
Right.
As an athlete, any athlete understands, like, if I go work out and I exert energy, I need to rest so my muscles can repair themselves, rebuild, and then I can recover and go out and do the same thing the next day. And
Absolutely.
so, cannabis helps in that process. And also that you have cannabis strains that uplift you, right? That help you focus, that help you, sustain certain things. So I think it's important, again, that people understand why, and we're dealing with a heavy mental health crisis right now, right? And it's everywhere. It's upper middle class, it's middle class, it's poor class, it's black, it's white, there's no color. You know what I mean? Also
It's the
opioids,
plague.
right? So it's literally a plague, right? You have the mental health, but then you have physical health, right? A lot of Ohio is a heavy labor state. Ohio prides itself on being working class, factory workers. And with that comes a lot of wear and tear on the body over time, right? So even if you're young, sports is big in Ohio. So you see a lot
Right.
of young people with injuries, young, you know, ACL, PCL, meniscus, ankles. And so then, we don't account for the pain, the lingering pain, because when you're
Right.
young, you kind of bounce back, right? You don't feel it, but we're only getting older. So
Hmm.
you feel, like I'm 34. I feel some of those ankle sprains, some of those strains and things that happened when I was in middle school, high school, and
Yeah.
college. Now it hurts even more, and so mental health, the PTSD, some days you wake up more groggy than others, right? Some days, those things that trip you off, right? Or set you off. Um,
Hmm.
because we're always a work in progress. And I
Right.
think we have to, again, humanize ourselves as being human. We're not perfect, despite what the media portrays. And this is why I come on here, normal, you know what I mean? Like, not super highly produced, because
Right.
we're normal and we have to humanize ourselves again. The media doesn't help to humanize football players, basketball players, entertainers, right? They're mules. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
They're literal mules. And once I realized I was a show pony and a mule in the circus, I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore.
Right. Yeah.
And that's why we don't talk about a lot of stuff, right? In sports world or entertainment. It's like, no, I don't want to talk about this. I want to be, I want to live this fantasy. And it's like, now it's
Mhm.
coming down. Like, where do we think mental health illness is coming from? We're living in
Right.
fantasy land 24/7, 365, but then we got to wake up and live in reality.
I
And
know.
it's like, oh, I hate my life. You can't keep running from your life.
I know. It's crazy. It really is. And then the continuation of it, like people that just go undiagnosed, and then that affects generational.
Well, which also comes down to
Right.
finances. It comes down to community, environment, because you may be dealing with some health or mental health issues that your mom or dad were dealing with that was undiagnosed, untreated.
Right.
Grandma, grandpa, so a lot of things are generational. We just are now starting to have the deeper conversation broadly about it. We're just starting to have some of these conversations, even in, certain communities. Before, you had to have a lot of money to go get treatment, and then we could
Yeah.
hide you away, right? Like, if you had money, rich kid having problems, they send him away. Nobody knows. He comes back, rejuvenated. It could be for alcohol, it could be for drugs, whatever. But most people don't have access to that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Most people can't take away time from work to go focus on their mental health. And so, especially in a society where we glamorize work, right? Work, work,
Yeah.
work, 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 work. We glamorize. You got to make more money. You got to work hard to make more money to have more opportunity. And so, I think, again, with the mental health conversation, it's just conversation and realizing that it looks like many different things. People are
Yeah.
functioning with mental health illness. A lot of us are, especially coming out of COVID.
Oh yeah.
You
Oh
know, so piggybacking off of that, are you from Ohio, born and raised Ohio?
yeah. Yeah. I'm born and raised in Southern Ohio. Always been here. Always been.
Okay. And what were you doing before you got into the cannabis industry in terms of work?
I was a sales representative for AT&T. I had a lot of sales background. I worked at AT&T, and before I worked there, I worked at Ace Hardware, but it closed down. So ultimately went there for about 2 years and then jumped ship.
Gotcha.
And some mental health problems came up, and so it goes.
Yeah. And so have you been able to receive benefits or resources in your area for the things that you're dealing with? Because I also work in the healthcare environment as well. So I know that there's large gaps when it comes to especially men's mental health.
Right. I have not. No, I have not.
Okay. And I think that's something too, because I've been looking for different initiatives, right, that we could use and be a part of. Because I know, people dealing with all sorts of things, but I know as men, we are having the most trouble when it comes to like, who do we talk to? right?
Right.
Like we can only talk to us, really,
Yeah.
because women don't understand what it's like to be a man, right? We just like we don't understand what it's like to be them, but
Right.
we're not necessarily going shopping for therapy, right? We
Right.
need other forms of therapy, but also if you're dealing with pain and mental health, you may not be able to exercise like you used to be able to. So how do you deal with the change? Because that's something in my transition that I've had to deal with, right? I have to change. How do I train? How do I work out? You know what I mean? Because being an athlete, I want to go, balls to the wall. It's like, dude, like
Mhm.
you're sore tomorrow, you can't move,
Mhm.
So it's
Yep.
figuring out those different things. But that's good to know, and I'm writing it down because there is resources in the state of Ohio for mental health. But also one of the things that I think is we're struggling with in our state is that our government is not backing or supporting cannabis.
Right.
So, when you have money and resources coming down from the federal level to the state level and then to the local level, but then we're isolating like, hey, we're not going to allow people that use cannabis to be a part of these benefits, or we're not going to even market and advertise that cannabis can help you with mental health. It can help you with, alcoholism, help you with, opioids and all these things. Because we have a state-run medical cannabis program right now. Where's the education, right? Where is the state? Like, there's millions of dollars, and we see the money because we can go to the website and see that you're making millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars from cannabis. Where are those dollars going to help those people in need?
Right. That's a really good question. And another thing too, like for me, just being a patient and just interacting with other patients in the dispensary, it really still shocks me like when I meet a patient and they don't know what a terpene is, like in their cannabis that they use. And so like I can always blow my mind in a way, like you've been a patient for 2 years and never heard of a terpene. Like it's very important for your health, to know which terpenes work right for you and getting you the best cannabis necessary to help you live pain free. And like, when you explain it to them, it's kind of like, oh, like it makes
I'm
sense.
glad you. I'm gonna hold you. I'm gonna cut you off there because I'm glad you
Oh,
brought up terpenes. Tell the people that are watching this what are terpenes and how do they
terpenes.
affect your health.
Yeah, terpenes are what is found in cannabis to help you give your, I like to just call it effect, really. So like in THC, it's obviously going to get you high, but your terpenes run direct that high. It's going to determine, essentially how you feel, and it's also going to determine what kind of quote unquote care that you did. Anti-inflammatory, make you sleepy, make you happy, make you giggle. Terpenes are very essential. Right. Terpenes are very essential for cannabis. I couldn't imagine cannabis without my terpenes. I've jumped on the big terpene train.
The smell of specific
very aroma, right. It helps the aroma of the flower as well. Yeah, I love terpenes. I mean,
and so I think too, when we talk about cannabis, and this is part of this dialogue, conversation, and interview series, is that we're educated, right?
Right.
So by no means are we doctors. I'm not saying we're experts. Go to a doctor, find an expert. This is personal experience. But I say that because so many people, I didn't know what a terpene was, right? Like all we knew growing up. I mean, and again, this industry is just now becoming legalized and acceptable, and so we are really on the forefront of it. And that's why I'm having you explain certain things because now you become the person that he knows what he's talking about. And so because that's important because when we talk about how things make you feel, right? All of us are different. Your pain level is different than my pain level. Your means of consumption and how you like to consume is different than how I like to consume. Your PTSD level is different than my PTSD level. And so when we equate for that, cannabis is not a one size fits all, right? You may need more or less cannabis, THC, CBD, CBG. There's so many different parts of the cannabis plant. And so when we talk about terpenes, a lot of people in cannabis, and we're still getting out of this, and a lot of the companies need to do better educating as well, because we'll see sativa, we'll see indica, and we'll see a hybrid, which is just terms. It doesn't really, we need to get to the scientific elements of limonene, paraphyline, these different terpenes, because once you realize, hey, I'm dealing with pain, I'm dealing with anxiety, I'm dealing with depression, PTSD, I'm dealing with inflammation, I'm dealing with insomnia, all these things, now I can see which terpene makes me feel better, subsides whatever I'm dealing with in that area, and then now you can go be more consistent with what you go to the dispensary for, or what you decide to grow. Hey, because yes, if you can take a strain and that makes you more anxious, which a lot of people consume, they don't know what they're consuming, they say, well, I didn't like it, I was paranoid, I was anxious. Well, you probably had a strain that didn't dive well for what you were doing. And so again, that's why I had you, not to cut you off, but that's why I had you talk about terpenes. Now, what are your terpenes? What terpenes do you like? How do they help you?
Myrcene, limonene, and cumulene are my top three, I would say. I have to have my myrcene because I have a very hard time going to sleep at night. So just right before the bed, have a little vaporizer of some myrcene. I typically like some layer cake or ice cream cake.
Love layer cake. Grow Ohio.
Yep. And then I've been jumping on the sandbar garlic cookies train too. That's probably my favorite right now. That's a really good myrcene right there.
Nice. And so anybody dealing with pain, PTSD, physical pain, typically your myrcene, those are going to be some things that really bode well for pain and things that you deal with. How do you consume? Vape?
Vape. Yeah, I like to use vaporizers and sometimes I use flower.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
And
then, what about
you? So I'm typically flower. I've been getting more into using my Puffco peat. So I've been doing more hashes, more resins, and stuff like that. So I would say the last year or so, before that, I was straight, grinding it up, putting it in a bowl, putting it in a cone or something, and rolling up. So I've expanded since we got the program. I love the carts just because they're easy. I got kids, so it's not a huge mess. I can pick it up, go. But yeah, lately I've been a Puffco peat. I also like I've done a couple RSOs, syringes that I really like. But I've been venturing out more and more. But I'm typically like you said, myrcene, limonene, that more like even keel, low, because I can be high. I don't really need something to get me up even higher.
Right.
So I use it to really kind of balance me out most times. I love it. So where do you see cannabis going in Ohio? What do you want to see? What are your hopes, aspirations, dreams for our state today? What do we need to tell Mike DeWine, our state representatives, the citizens of Ohio, citizens of the world? What's going on in Ohio? What we need to do?
This Ohio way proposal, just snip it. I mean, people have obviously voted and they've obviously talked. They want cannabis. I mean, let them have it. I mean, I understand, there's procedures that go into place to protect children if we obviously want to, but cannabis for the people, and I think we should just regulate it like alcohol. It's been under scrutiny for too long, way too long, and a lot of people, especially in the state of Ohio, in Portsmouth too, that has lost their lives, has been locked up for it. It's time. It's time to just grow up. And it's 2023, and I mean, yeah, come on, like it's been way too long. Like, really.
How old are you?
Me, I am 23 years old.
23. So you because you're the generation, well, you're Gen Z, I'm a millennial. But you guys are the ones that are like, we ain't going for nothing. You know, because you've been on social media, you guys were born into the internet. But I think one thing that my generation and your generation have lacked from is the older generations have failed to empower us and teach us how politics works, how community collectiveness works, because we're more powerful together than we are separate. We have more in common than we have different. But one thing that I realized too is that the older generation, like it's like our grandparents. Like they're literally going to get, it's like we're literally having generational warfare right now. Because I'm in boardrooms, I'm in political rooms, black, white, and different, and it's all older people. And all of them are like, no, we don't want weed. Our kids are, and it's like, are you people? But we can have alcohol. Y'all are all beamed up on caffeine and coffee right now. The high fructose corn syrup and all the foods. But weed?
Yeah.
You have a mom come out the woodwork and say, oh, my son died and he was on weed. Come to find out he was on ecstasy, alcohol, and weed.
Yep. But like, you're going to tell the truth, you got to tell it right. You know?
Right. And again, that's why stories matter, right? That's why real stories from real people matter, and that's what we want to do with Ohio Cannabis Report. That's always been my goal. You know, I talk a lot about race, and people see that, but that's because that's my vantage point. That's what I've seen. I know my community has been hit hardest by the war on drugs and things like that. So my thing is, hey, if we all speak up, because I know there are white people, I know there are poor white people that get treated bad too. You know, but once we realize again that we have more in common than we have different, then we can come together and meet. You know, because we have to at some point we have to come together. We have to work together. We have to share. You know, because we see things now. It's not we're not living in the 60s and 70s anymore. You know what I mean? Like, yes, racism still exists, but how do we move forward? How do we educate ourselves on it and not repeat it? You know, instead of being shamed by it, instead of saying, hey, this is our shameful. Of course, it's shameful. You know what I mean? But we've been operating for 400 plus years now. You know what I mean? It's time to really have these conversations. So cannabis, I feel like drives through that. And I'm happy that we get to have these conversations finally out in the open without feeling some type of way. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And especially like being around Portsmouth, a lot of people when they think of weed, they automatically think of the pill clinics 15 years ago that were popping up shop.
Right.
Because that's a lot of people.
Which a lot of doctors were opening up because the doctors were siphoning off the pills because they could get paid for writing scripts. Which a lot of people don't talk about. And me from a health, this is why I didn't get into healthcare and sales, right? Because from a sales background, you push an AT&T, right? We got the best. But what are you gonna do with pills? Oh, we got the best pills on the market, baby.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a lot of people still have that PTSD from that.
Ohio was hit very hard by the pill, and Ohio was a part of the settlement from all these pharmaceutical companies. And there's billions of dollars in the state of Ohio right now that the government and the governor has control over to maneuver this money around through the state that people need access to, that people that have dealt with the directly dealt with opioids need to be receiving compensation for. So there's programs in Ohio. There's a nonprofit that they just started up. I forget the name's not coming to me right now, but look it up if you're in the state of Ohio. There's money in the state. There's federal money from the state that the governor is sitting on right now. There's roads and bridges being built that the governor's not giving any credit for, but he got that money from the federal government. So there's a lot going on. A lot of these towns, they just allocated 100 million to southeastern Ohio for some business startup stuff. So call your state representatives, call your city councilmen, let them know that you're for cannabis. Let them know, because again, we are the people. If we don't let the politicians know, they don't know. They'll keep moving their agenda. You can call them, you can email them, you can tweet them. We post some of that information on our Instagram, but don't be afraid. These are human beings, but they work for you. You know what I mean? So again, man, I want to thank you for giving us your time and sharing your story. Is there anything else that you want to share? How can people find you, reach you? Just in case maybe you might get a job offer. You got a girl, a girl may hit you up like, yo, I like that dude. Hey, yo, he.
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn at Theo Hieneman or Instagram at JTOH24. That's the best place to reach me.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you, man, for coming on. I'm gonna have this up on YouTube probably later today. So definitely, I appreciate you giving me your time.
Hey, I appreciate you, man. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too. Have a good one.
Hey, you too.
Thanks. All right. I appreciate you agreeing to the interview.
Hey, I appreciate the opportunity.